I'm back! So in the next two videos, we're going to make the pattern pieces. Again, it was going to be too long of a video, so I have broken it up into two separate videos. They will be released on the same day. You'll see one right after the other. And in these videos, I am going to list below the tools you're going to need to make the pattern pieces. Some of them are going to be slightly different than when you made your pattern block. So all that information is going to be down below, and as well as video links to all of the previous videos in this series. So let's get going! Okay, so now we're on to drawing out the pattern pieces. For the pattern pieces, you're going to need a few supplies. You're going to need paper scissors, a sharp pencil, a eraser, sharpener to keep that pencil sharp. I would also have a couple of markers and a highlighter, and the reason I'm suggesting a highlighter is so that as you go through your pattern, which is these two pieces, as you do a measurement, highlight it so that you know that you've done that measurement and you don't get confused. You'll of course need your pattern pieces. You're going to use those numbers on there and then you're going to need, I'm jumping ahead a bit here, you're going to need paper to draft your pattern on. You're going to need your pattern blocks and your templates. You're going to use your pattern block and your template to create the pattern piece. So go ahead, get those items ready, and we'll get drafting pattern pieces. So what I recommend you do first is lay out the paper you're going to be tracing your pattern blocks onto, and then once you have done that, trace each one out. So let's go ahead and do that now. And the reason I'm saying to trace it out as opposed to just holding your block as you do your measurements, that block is going to shift around, and if you have an outline traced out already, you can work from that, and that way you're not going to be messing up your measurements. Okay, now that we've traced our pieces, on each piece, write that it's the front or the back, so you know which piece you're working from, as well as I would write information like the name of the book. You know, so for instance, this is Book of Draftings. Number 41. And who this pattern is for. And even what the name of the blouse is. So this is blouse figure A. This way you can keep track of your pattern pieces, because sometimes they will look similar. There's that possibility that your pattern pieces might end up looking similar. So it is really important to do that. And the other thing to keep in mind, which we'll take care of later, is the pattern pieces do not have seam allowance on them. So we're going to add those in afterwards. And in this case, what we're going to have to do is, again, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but this will come in, we'll talk about this again later. This pattern has a yoke separate from the body piece. What we're going to have to do, and what I suggest you do, is draft this out first, cut it apart, then redraft it with the seam allowance on it. So you're going to end up doing 2 pattern pieces, and this is when having tracing paper or tissue paper will come in handy. So this will be your base pattern piece, which, I mean, and you don't even have to cut it apart. It's up to you. If you don't want to get too messy, don't cut it apart. But take your tracing paper, overlay it on whatever piece you're adding the seam allowance to, and then add the seam allowance. So in fact, you're going to end up with 2 sets of pattern pieces for this specific pattern, because there is a yoke that's going to be separated from the body of the pattern piece. So just keep that in mind for later, okay? Now, what I suggest you do, we're going to be starting with the back piece, which is the one on the left. What I highly suggest you do, and this is what I usually do, is I start from the left, or the line. So in the center back line or the center front line, this is where I start. And I'm actually going to right center back. And in this case, because this is the back, you're going to be cutting on the fold, so just note cut on fold. Hopefully you can see the line. What I might do actually, so you can see that center back line, is I think I'm going to just throw my pattern piece on there, and I'm not going to use a marker for the whole thing. The final piece I'll probably go over on marker, but because sometimes you have to erase lines, so it's harder to erase marker. But I just want you to be able to see this. It's a bit of a rough line. I should have trimmed down the Bristol board a bit better, but okay, now you can actually see that center line better in the video. So we're going to start from that point, and I also usually work up and then over. When you're also doing this, make sure your paper is big enough, because it's not a huge amount that you're going to go out from the pattern piece in this case. There might be situations where you're making a coat, pants, or a skirt, dress, where there might be a bit of a bigger movement of the lines to the sides or up and down. So we're not going down very much in this case, so I'm not worried about it. But if you were doing a full dress, and, you know, for instance, the dress pieces were all one piece, because there were a lot of pattern pieces then that were one long piece. You know, maybe there was several of the pieces, but there were long pieces, as opposed to having a bodice and a skirt. So make sure you have enough paper, because you don't want to end up running out of room. I mean, really, you could just tape more paper to it, but just save yourself a little bit of work. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to draft the back piece, and we're going to go by exactly what the measurements say on here. And as I mentioned, have a highlighter handy, and as you do a measurement, highlight it, and that way you know you've done that measurement. That way you're not missing any of them. I mean, it's going to be obvious at the end when you look at your pattern piece and you're going to say something doesn't look right, but save yourself that. So when you're looking at your pattern piece, I'm not going to do close-ups of the pattern piece constantly, because you're going to have it in front of you. So just an FYI. So on the top left corner, there's going to be dot A mentioned. Actually, I'm just going to put the pattern piece here so I can see it, so that you know that you are in the right place. I would just write this, just so you are matching your block. And what it's telling you is to go, and this is where, again, you're going to need your templates because the ruler. So what it's saying is to remove 2 inches this way. So I'm going to mark down 2 inches. And then going from here, dot 1, we're going to go 2.5 inches down. Let's mark that. Okay. So those have been marked. Then on here it has the word broad. And what it's saying is, on your pattern piece, you have the arrow that says broad, and you use that to create this before. So you're going to use that to do the same thing. Okay, so you're going to match the broad arrow up over on the left hand side, and you're going to match it up over here, and then you're going to draw your neckline. So this is your new neckline, and you're going to cut away this part from your pattern piece. You're not going to use that part. Then you're going to go down 2 more inches and make a mark. And that's where your yoke is starting. Then this is your shoulder point, which is showing up as a dotted line on the pattern. You're going to measure out 3.5 inches. From dot 1, which is on the old part of the neckline, you're then going to measure down to that dot you made, which was 3.5 inches out from that top armhole, and then you're going to draw a line. Okay, so I did that just sort of help as a guide. So the next thing we're going to do is, again, so from the new neckline, from that top corner, you're going to measure over 1 inch and put a mark. And that's going to help you determine where the curve is going to be for the other part of the yoke. And that's going to be on a similar curve to this. And there they have drawn a dotted line down on an angle. So you're going to do the same thing. So from the 2-inch mark that you've made up here, in the top of the neckline here, you're going to come down on an angle, just a slight angle, you know, emulate the angle that's in the illustration, and you're going to come down 2 inches. And this is where your yoke is going to come across for like where you're going to cut it for the armhole. So you're going to draw that line on an angle. What I've also done, because there is another measurement on here, this is 1.5 inches. That is 1.5 inches in from that armsicle. So what I did was I drew a reference point for 1.5 inches, just so that I know where this curve is supposed to end. And then you're going to draw from that mark you made here, that 2-inch mark you made here, over to the bottom of that dotted line. Actually, I'm just going to double check that measurement one more time. It doesn't look like it's quite 1.5 inches. Nope, it's 1.5 inches. It's just, oh wait, hold on. I'm at the wrong dot. That would be why. That was my original reference dot. It's off slightly. There we go. Okay, so let me just erase that other dot. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to draw the curve. Where's that broad arrow? Okay, and that is, oops, my nail. That is the bottom part of your yoke. And to finish off the yoke, you're going to use your front piece for this, the front template. You're going to measure in, see this here, the bottom, dot 3. You're going to go to dot 3. You're going to measure in 1.5 inches. And mark that. And you're going to go down, it's about, it says 1.5 inches, but it's not really when I'm doing, the way I'm doing it, it's only coming out to 1 inch. Yeah, let's try it with 1.5 inches down. Apologies if my head was in the way. Let's measure down 1.5 inches. And then in 1.5 inches. So the dot should be there. And then you're going to put, where are we here? I have 2 dots here. The broad arrow on that dot, and then you're going to go back up to the top corner of your yoke. Line that up. Oh, I think I shipped it. I did. I did a test line here and it did not work. It was too narrow. Okay, so that is your yoke. Well, not complete yet because we got to finish the sleeve, but that is the inner line now from your yoke. So I'm just gonna, as I've been telling you to do, I'm just gonna highlight off what I just did. Okay, and then again, from dot 3, you're going to measure down 1 inch. because that's going to help determine the curve when we draw the outer edge of the sleeve down. So what I thought we'd do is just quickly recap before we finish the sleeve. And I've drawn in black marker where we're at so far, just so you can see what we've done. Again, this is the back piece. So we drew up 2 inches, and we drew down 2.5 inches, and using the curve from the template, we drew this line. So that's the new neckline. We went down 2 inches here, over 2 inches here, and drew another line. That's the bottom of the yoke. Then, the next thing we did was we came down and drew this line, which was 3.5 inches out from, 3.5 inches out from here, the old shoulder, top of the old shoulder line. This line is not going to be used anymore. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to squiggle it because we're not using that line anymore. So, 3.5 inches out, made a dot. That is going to end up being our top of our sleeve. From the new curve, or the top corner of the yoke, we came out 1.5 inches, out 1 inch there. And then, or sorry, no, it's still 1.5 inches here. Sorry, my apologies, 1.5 inches up. And then we drew, sorry, my apologies, 1.5 inches down. I'm sorry if I'm confusing you. 1.5 inches down. And then we drew this curve here. So that's where we're at now. So next we're going to finish off the sleeve. So from here, from the old arm cycle, we're going to come out 3.5 inches. And then from dot 3, we're going to come out 1 inch and draw a line. So we're going to join those dots. Yeah. We're also going to, and I ended this dot here, 1/2 an inch down from dot 3. So we have 3 spots here, and this is how we're going to do the curve. So we're going to put the curved arrow, here. There we go. And then just draw around that curve. And now we have a curve. And I am going to take my marker and just draw out those bits so that you can see them better, because I know that right now they're hard to see. And because I know you're probably able to see the pencil lines, but I want to make sure. Oh, I did not continue that line on. And that's the top of the shoulder. So hopefully you can see this now. So we have the yoke, which is this part, and then we don't have the body extended completely yet, but we're going to do that right now. So the body comes down from dot 3, comes down 13 inches. And as I said, make sure your paper's long enough, and I did not. So my paper is short by 3 inches, so what I'm going to do is draw the line down. Where's dot 3? Draw the line down, and where are we here? Dot 3. Dot 3, here we are. Sorry, I'm 2 inches short. And you're going to draw a straight line down. So let me do this way so that I'm drawing a straight line. What is dot 3? And then what I'll do is when I cut out this pattern piece, I will add the missing 2 inches at the bottom of the paper. But that's why I'd mentioned make sure your paper was long enough. I should have went further up on my paper. So even the teacher makes mistakes sometimes. And then what you're going to do is, it doesn't give a measurement for this part, but guesstimate about, I don't know, let's say, well, my natural waistline hits 7 inches under my armpit. So I'm going to come down 7 inches. Oh, wrong way. I'm going to come down 7 inches. From dot 3, which actually it's already marked here. And from your natural waist, what you're going to do is go in 1/2 inch, and what that does is it gives the garment a bit of a curve, a bit of shape. So I'm going to, where are we here? Mark 1/2 inch. And then from dot 3, I'm going to draw a new line. Where are we here? Where's that? There we are. So we're going to draw a new line here. And then once I have the bottom of my garment, I'll draw back out to the proper corner. But I need to add the paper at the bottom. So I'm going to do that right now, and I'll be right back so I can finish that line. Okay, so hopefully you can see this. I've now gone ahead and finished the line down, all the way down on both sides, and I have now outlined everything in black. So this is ready to cut out.